Alright, I want to talk a little bit more about rendering. I had mentioned the shadow in the last installment, that Revit is casting a shadow even though there is no ground plane here. And that is based on the sun settings area where it says ground plane at level 1. So it just is assuming a false ground plane there so you can see your shadows. However, if I render it, and I'm just going to go back in here to my exposure control and reset all that to default, and render at medium, you're not going to get any shadows because there is no ground plane to cast those shadows upon. The other thing that's good to note is that because there's no ground plane, there's no light being bounced back up at the object. The light's just passing, maybe bouncing a little in here, but not really getting any back up there. So, to get that ground plane turned on, I've actually created one for you, and it's in here. It's just hidden. So if you come down to your view control bar, there's a reveal hidden elements that looks like a little light bulb. You can click that and the screen edge turns magenta, which means you're in the reveal hidden elements mode. And if I'm just zooming out here, you can see the topography is also magenta. So anything hidden is going to turn up magenta. So if you left click on that topography, you can come up here and unhide category. And then you can toggle out of that mode and you can zoom back in on this guy. And then I'll come in and render this again and you'll see that you will get the shadow cast on the blue. And you'll also see that you'll get a little bit of bounce of the blue up onto the object, and it'll get a little brighter because light is bouncing up onto it. Now, one more thing I want to take a look at is if I go to printer, you're going to notice that the width of this is massive, right? 203 5/8. That's because the crop box hasn't been set. So if you're going to printer, you need to set your crop box. So I'm just going to close this. And down in the bottom are two show crop region and crop view. So I'm going to show crop region and crop view and zoom out. And there's that box, right? And what I'm going to do is just pull this box in a little bit, right, to where it is closer in on that object. And once you get it sort of where you want it set, you can go to size and crop up here. And I usually just, will even it out. But I mean, 29 by 18 is pretty big, right? So let's just go ahead and do 29 by 18. Now we are in a parallel view, so that means that the size of this is controlled by the scale. So if I go in and make that smaller, so say I take it down to 1/16 of an inch, right, and then I pick that crop region again and size and crop, you're going to see that it cuts it in half to 14.5 by 9, right, because that's half the size of what we had before. Now if you go to render and you are on the printer, it goes to 14 by 9. So you need to set your crop box if you're going to render to printer. Okay. The other thing that's worth noting is that if you pick, like I just left clicked on that topography surface, you can change the material over here on the left. It's a native Revit object and it has the material as a instance parameter, so you can just left click in that right hand and that generic material will come up, and then you can change that in the appearance. I can maybe change this to sort of something that would be kind of a yellow that's going to reflect a different color. So that goes to yellow. We can also maybe pull up its glossiness and make it metallic, and you'll see that it will update and be a little shinier. Click OK. And now if I render this, it's going to give me a yellow cast and a yellow background topography. Whoops. And that material may have caused it to render at a higher resolution, so sometimes you have to be careful for that. But let's see, my computer can crunch through this. It's most likely that I have rendered the topography in metallic, and that was clearly a bad idea. So I'm going to pause this. Alright, so we're almost done. So there, it rendered it out. I don't know, it only took another minute or so. It wasn't too bad. And then I'll just go and adjust the exposure. Maybe bring the saturation up a little bit. Right. And maybe a little darker on the exposure. See how that does? Okay. Okay, well you can see the reason that it took so long is because I had it set on printer, right? So it just rendered it at a higher resolution. So you definitely want to export this and save it out as opposed to not doing so, or save it to your project. Either one, since you took the time to render it as a print resolution. Alright, so that's it for this one. Got one more and then we'll be done with rendering.